Richard Nixon, early life and family background. A flicker on a grainy television screen. A stern man's voice cracks. I am not a crook. It's 1973, and for a generation of Americans, this becomes a defining soundbite. But before that fall, before the scandal and the resignation, there was Richard Milhouse Nixon, the man, the myth, the father. Born in 1913 in Yorba Linda, California, Nixon was raised in the tight grip of Quaker frugality and the looming specter of lost siblings. His early life was defined by loss, 2 brothers dead by tuberculosis, and a relentless pursuit of control over chaos. He studied law at Duke University, served in the Navy during World War II, and returned with fire in his gut. He wanted more than just a seat in Congress. He wanted history to remember him. The climb was swift. He earned a reputation as a relentless anti-communist during the Alger Hiss case and became vice president under Eisenhower in 1953. Then, after a failed 1960 presidential bid and an even more bruising California governor's race in 1962, he famously told the press they wouldn't have Nixon to kick around anymore. But history and Nixon had other plans. In 1968, Nixon re-emerged, steely and rebranded, winning the presidency and positioning himself as the man to heal a fractured America. Behind the resolute jaw and high rhetoric, there was also a husband and a father. He had married Pat Ryan in 1940, a schoolteacher with nerves of steel and a heart full of stoic grace. Together they had 2 daughters, Patricia, known as Tricia, and Julie. At the White House, Nixon was both present and distant. The job consumed him, but the daughters, well, they were quiet constants. To the outside world, they were smiling, mannered, composed. Inside, they navigated a home fueled by strategy, silence, and a father whose ambition often drowned out his affection. His legacy would be one of geopolitical chess moves: China, the Soviet Union, Vietnam, but also personal fallout. By the time Watergate surfaced, Tricia and Julie were no longer children. They were women shaped by proximity to power and its collapse. They had watched their father rise through grit and strategy, only to watch it all burn under tapes, denials, and a country's disillusionment. But before their stories diverged, they stood as sentinels, one quiet, one reflective, at the center of a family breaking under the weight of its own name. Tricia Nixon, the quiet anchor. Tricia was born into a deliberate world, a world polished for propriety. Her earliest memories were of manicured lawns and matching clothes. She idolized her father, his gravitas on screen, his quiet leadership off, but also sensed his distance. Still, she leaned into the role with grace. She became the pillar, the quiet one who would endure. By high school, Tricia embodied silent sophistication. At Whittier College preparatory dances, she moved like water in silk, calm, unruffled, always measured. She graduated to Vassar College, first daughter away from home but carrying the same polish. She learned that public scrutiny was unrelenting. Random questions in classes, whispered rumors, speculation about her emotions and opinions. She weathered it like armor, quiet, steadfast. When Nixon became vice president and later president, Tricia's world orbited around protocol, ribbon cuttings, charity balls, official tours. She was the public face of dignity, never flashy, never misbehaving. She learned to smile at the right moment, to speak softly yet confidently, to be the reassurance to the nation's daughters that, whatever turmoil reigned, at least the second daughter was serene. In 1971, she married Edward Ed Cox, a political aide, someone who saw her for more than optics, someone who valued her inner strength. They shared a singular son, Christopher, born in 1979, and together they created a niche of quiet normalcy. Birthday candles without microphones, PTA meetings instead of presidential tours, evening lullabies, family dinners, bedtime by moonlight, not limelight. Yet Watergate knocked hard. Public resignation, military headlines gave way to public disgrace. Tricia absorbed it quietly. She did not lash out, did not dramatize. She spoke later of private grief, of bearing the weight, but never publicized those nights when she lay awake, struggling between love for her father and exhaustion from scandal. She became the protector of the family's dignity. Tricia took on civic boards, cultural institutions, museums, always modest, always behind the scenes, lending her name, her time, her sense of propriety to causes of historical memory, urban renewal, art. She became paradoxically invisible, a force of steadiness. Even after Richard Nixon passed in 1994, Tricia remained discreet. She joined her sister in archiving the Nixon Library in Yorba Linda, closing the circle of memory with grace. She and Ed remain in New York, a life of calm, a life away from the camera. She is 79 now, a bridge between the storms of the past and the quiet dignity of the present. From the heights of political promise to that post-Watergate solitude, Tricia's life is a portrait of endurance. We glimpse her in private letters, in photo archives, in soft recollections. She never demanded attention. Her story is one of holding steady when the world was collapsing. Sometimes the bravest face is the one that never cracks. Julie Nixon, the reflective voice. Julie arrived into a complex legacy, 2 years younger than Tricia, but equally subject to the same public gaze. Still, she found refuge in pen and paper. By age 5, she was scribbling poems about birds. She read voraciously. While Tricia mastered poise, Julie mastered heart, a delicate soul shaped for introspection. In high school, Julie was quieter, an observer of moments instead of their performer. Instead of dances, she preferred study. Instead of public events, she enjoyed afternoons in the family library. She traveled with her family on global diplomatic tours, warming to foreign languages, collecting pressed flowers, jotting reflections into small journals. Her gift was sensitivity, felt details, emotional nuance, the tension behind public smiles. During Nixon's presidency, Julie was often her mother's shadow. At the family events, she'd glance at her father's defense, especially "I am not a crook," with a searching calm. She'd observe the way her mother stood still and sure behind the lectern. She absorbed every moment. She learned to respond publicly with sincerity. She wrote speeches for ceremonial events, always crafting phrases that sounded personal, not rehearsed. In 1968, she met David Eisenhower, and by 1968 and 71, they married. In those years, she found refuge in deeper reflection. The marriage merged political lineages, Nixon, Eisenhower, but for Julie, it meant a family of equals, of mutual understanding. They welcomed Alexander, Melanie, and Jenny over the following years, a living testimony to public decision turned private dedication. Julie pursued a reflective path. She wrote her memoirs, Pat Nixon, Embattled First Lady, 1981, exploring her mother's paradox, a medieval grace under siege, a private soul discounted by public glare. Later came The Violet Fox, a fictional historical exploration of family burdens. Each work was an act of processing, a lyrical excavation of legacy, guilt, and resilience. When the resignation came, Julie was 26 and pregnant with her first child. The irony struck inside her, the birth of life amid the death of reputation. She later wrote of sensing a vast emptiness at the edge of joy. Trading headlines for hospital curtains, she turned inward. Publicly, she smiled, quiet politeness, but her soul was pulling back. Julie went on to co-found the Richard Nixon Foundation, chaired conferences at the Institute of Politics at Harvard, mentored students. She traveled as a speaker, diplomacy, history, ethics, speaking from uniquely lived themes, how legacies persist, how families bear generational weight. She and David carved a home on Cape Cod, where summer mornings smelled of salt and grass, where children collected sea glass, where legacy receded into daily rituals. With time, Julie's heart softened. Her grandchildren grew. She never ceased to reflect on lineage, leadership, the frailty of power. Her essays lean on paradox, love lost, and love endured. In interviews, she speaks of the sisters' bond, how Tricia grounded her, how together they bore their father's ghost. She contemplates aging, asks what we hold when titles fade away. Julie is 77 now. Still writing, still quiet, still probing the chasm between public persona and private truth. She remains a guide to diplomacy and memory, mapping the journey of a girl who became a daughter of scandal and still found her voice. Conclusion: legacy and reflection. Tricia and Julie were born in a world polished for optics, yet defined by rupture. Their childhood crafted them as symbols, elegant pillars in a tempest. When the storm of Watergate struck, they held on, one with silent strength, the other with poetic introspection. They bore legacies shaped by power, scandal, and generational burden. They were daughters first, keeping each other steady, one sister a calm bulwark, the other a reflective voice. Their stories are intertwined by love, history, and the search for self beyond inherited tragedy. Today, their worlds are private, but not diminished. Tricia's service is quiet. Julie's voice is measured and true. Through civic engagement, mentorship, familial devotion, they shape legacy beyond their father. In them, we see resilience clothed in silence, emotional reckoning dressed in prose. What does it mean to inherit a name, to carry its weight in both honor and disgrace? Tricia and Julie remind us that descendants are not heirs only of credit, but of fracture. Their dignity in chaos and calm in unrest invites reflection. What do we choose to carry? What burdens do we leave behind? If this story of composure and reflection moved you, like, subscribe, share. Let us know which sister's journey, Tricia's steady strength or Julie's interior voice, spoke to you most. Whose life should we uncover next in Whatever Happened to Their Kids?